So this is it. Last session of day 3 of TechCon 2025. Had a great 3 days, but it's not over. We have yet one more great presentation for you. It's been a pleasure to host the API Management and Gateways track, be in many of these sessions with you. And again, remember, please ask questions anytime. Put them in the chat. We'll get to them. We'll get you answers. And if you want to, either ask a tougher question, do it as voice rather than typing it in. Join us after this for the office hours session, 2:30 p.m. Eastern, again, right after this session, where our speakers from the day will be there, ready to answer your questions, dive into a topic of discussion that you want to bring up, whatever. So with that, let's get started. Here's a great partner we have from IBM, for IBM, Brian and Orlando. I'll leave it over to you.
All right, thank you. Let me share my screen. Okay, hopefully everyone can hear me okay. My name is Brian Kataoka. I'm with the ISOA group. I'm the CTO, and maybe you know me from the book I wrote a couple years ago called Digital Transformation and Modernization with IBM API Connect. Today we're going to be talking about applying API Governance Lifecycle using API Connect as well as agentic AI tools. We're going to have a fabulous demo later on in the presentation. Next, I'd like to introduce my co-speaker, Orlando Colasakas, who's the CTO of Toolhouse AI. Orlando's been he's been on a plane from Italy to come back today just to do this presentation, so thank you very much. And let's get started. Okay, so today's agenda, we're going to talk about the challenges with API governance. And this is sort of backwards because I'm going to talk about API governance right after that in terms of what the best practices are. And then we're going to show kind of our agentic AI solution to help with API governance. So I wanted to set the stage in terms of here are the problems, everyone wants to do it, and how do we get beyond that? Then we'll show the demo, and then we'll have time for Q&A. Before I get started, I wanted to start you with a use case. And this is a very typical use case that may happen out there. So in this particular story, we have a brick and mortar company doing a retail, basically a retail outlet. And they were doing very well. And then we had the COVID outbreak. Okay, well, this was just a brick and mortar, so they really didn't have an online presence. And when, you know, the people weren't able to go out to the stores anymore, everybody was afraid, the business was going to take a hit. So immediately, the smart people that they are, they said, hey, we need to get some kind of digital transformation out there and started getting some APIs. So they said, spend the money, let's find some vendors that can build us this app, right? And kind of build us a storefront. So they reached out to a vendor and said, hey, get this done as soon as you can. We need it. But the company was also siloed. So there were other departments saying, hey, we need a presence out there. So they went out and got other subcontractors to build them APIs. And it went on, and they were successful. They were able to get live, but they had all these different issues that showed up. They had multiple teams building APIs. They used different products and frameworks. They started losing control of where their APIs were and what they did. And then the goal was, oh, well, we need to start consolidating. And when they started looking at all the hurdles in order to do that, That's when they decided, well, we really needed to start an API governance team before we did that. But unfortunately, we didn't. So now we have to kind of reconcile everything, figure out how we're going to set up guidelines. How do we get everything into a common repository? How do we find and discover all the APIs? So these are typical things that happen, and it's probably happened to many companies out there. You know, another use case that I don't have a slide for, but might come into play is there's a lot of companies I work with where they do M&As. They merge and they do acquisitions. And what happens there is now you inherit their systems. And when you inherit their systems, again, you have multiple teams, different APIs, different frameworks, different guidelines. And if you're going to build a common repository, now you have to figure out, how do I get those different APIs all on board with the same set of guidelines that we want as an organization? So these are some of the typical things that happen. And when this happens, you get a situation called API sprawl. And this particular slide here shows, hey, maybe they started off with 6 APIs, very manageable. And then all of a sudden, things started happening. People started designing things differently, or they had issues in terms of, okay, well, we have to do everything fast, so just go ahead and get it done. We'll worry about that later. A lot of them had user interfaces where you had to, you know, go through a number of parties to say, hey, well, does this work? And all of a sudden, you started creating a unique UIs for various things, and there really wasn't any kind of reuse or proper design. And then something that always happens is when you get it out there quickly is, okay, well, we'll get to the security and then we'll put it in later, and things get missed or not done properly. So these are things that happen out there. Another one is, oh, well, just get them out there, get these APIs running, and they don't use any kind of API management system. So already you're kind of behind the curve here because there's no way to manage all these APIs, right? So really what you need is, you know, having a center of excellence or an API governance team, start working with your DevSecOps team and coming out with these guidelines, right? So once you have that, then you could start moving forward. But again, at this point in time, you probably have API sprawl. So let me kind of go into, you know, what the benefits of having governance is, right? Number one, I mean, you want consistency across your APIs and you want quality built in. I mean, you want to be able to service your business, okay? The other thing you have to have is security. Now, there's a lot of ways to do it. There's, you know, there's edge security, there's built-in security to the APIs, you got web app firewalls. But the goal of the governance is you need to make sure the APIs are secure and compliant based on regulations, okay? Whichever method you decide to go with. The other thing that's extremely important is collaboration between your teams. I've worked at a number of companies, and pretty much, you know, the list is always siloed. I mean, you have a DevOps team, you have your API developer teams. Some of those might be divided by, you know, business process. You have your security team, right? And then you have your architects and others. So in order to have API governance work properly, you need to have these groups working cohesively, okay? And finally, you need to have some efficient workflows so things flow between these different departments and different processes, okay? So what are some of the best practices, okay? First, you know, you need to develop guidelines. And you need to do that as a team. You can't just exclude different groups and say they'll have their own. You need to work together. Then you need to look at things like versioning, right? How do you version your APIs? And you also have to look into the backward compatibility of these APIs, right? How do you manage that, right? Especially if you're doing an M&A kind of thing, you might get other APIs in there. And again, you have to think about that. As I mentioned earlier, API security is extremely important. In our organization, we're using the Akamai API security, formerly known as No Name. We're actually going to show that in our demonstration, and we're like one of the only business partner that kind of specializes in No Name API security. Okay, so as you import and start utilizing these API security measures, looking for vulnerabilities, etc., you also have to do within your governance practices, monitor and audit these APIs. Are they performing properly? Are you handling all the errors process? Are you doing limiting? Okay, all the things that you need to take into account. And then you need to be building user guides. Now, I've seen a lot of user guides. I've helped write some. Unfortunately, what happens is a lot of times people have to go to those guides and figure out what they're supposed to do, and that's time consuming. It could be interpreted differently, so you really need to make sure you have a way to standardize that. The other thing is you need to start automating testing, and I saw a lot of nice presentations this week on how API Connect's doing automatic testing, which is really cool. And then finally, these are just policies that you're setting up. So you need to continuously review them and update them going forward. So now that you know the best practices, these are the things that your teams want to do, and you're ready to go out there and tell your entire organization, let's go do it. And look what happens. Everybody's running around saying, oh, I don't know how to do that, or that's going to be a lot of extra work for me. Or I don't understand those guidelines, or they didn't take into account, how we do processing here in our DevOps, and all these things happen, and it becomes very chaotic. And you can also think of this also as an M&A. Oh, we just bought this big company, and they have thousands of APIs that we're going to put into our data center, and we're going to start running them. So these kinds of things happen, and this kind of leads us into what we're looking at. Our goal is to achieve API governance balance, kind of like a namaste thing. Oh, so we want to balance these with AI agents, right? So as we're talking between the different organizations and trying to get things without more human intervention, be able to say, hey, we should be able to do some of these things automatically. If we need discovery or more reporting, we can use Gen AI to go pull that all in, make it a nice report. And as we're building guidelines for API governance, why not put it into your large language model, right? We could load it with what they call RAG. So this is our goal, and this is what we're going to try to show you that we're accomplishing here at ISOA Group. Okay, so why do we want to use these agents? Well, yeah, as it says there, we want to accelerate the business outcomes, right? We know we have these, what I call them, gaps between API governance, where we're working, we have to work with people, we have to work with different processes. We need to get it more coordinated where there's a feedback loop. I mean, things like, let's say you do a deployment, your API security finds that there's a problem, a vulnerability. You should be able to say, okay, this API was deployed. I want to go back and check, is this the same API spec that was expected? Let's go back to the DevOps. Were there any issues there? So again, we want to be able to do some of this, I wouldn't say heavy lifting, but research for you, so that you're not saying, hey, let's set up a war room and get everybody in a room and start, not pointing fingers, but start asking, hey, what happened here? This will help you along the way. Okay, and again, so we're trying to reduce human error, right? And then the other nice thing about agents is, once you come up with your agents, they don't mind working late at night. You just say, hey, we're going to fire them up, and they're just going to go check all the time. So that's why we want to use agents. And why did we want to join and partner with Toolhouse? Well, in order to build these functions, and we're going to call them functions, and I think Toolhouse calls them functions also, we want to attach them to our LLMs, right? So that we can have these function calls being called where they're going to be reusable. So as we're using a particular large language model, if we decide, oh, we want to use something smaller, we should be able to switch that and still use the functions. Okay, so in our demo, we're using Granite, but as we call the external functions, we could be using something different. So if there is a language model that really does text processing very well, and we want to pull in your API governance guidelines, we can pull that in with a different large language model. Okay, and again, we just want to, as I said here, future-proof the business. Whatever we're going to put out there, we want it to last, right? We want it to be able to adjust and go forward with whatever we're building. Okay, and when we talk about API governance, there's a lot of touch points. So you might start off small and just do a few, but once you get better at developing these agents, you'll be able to start adding those in and achieving what you're looking for. Okay, so other things, and this is more about, I want you to think out of the box about these assistants, is when we talk about API governance, there's all kinds of things we can do. Okay, API Connect uses the spectral rules, right? Well, we're also looking at doing that, but using it as agents, right? So let's say that you do have an M&A and someone brings in some new APIs. You're going to want to lint those and get them up to the proper specs. Well, we can go in there and handcraft some of these rules, or we can use AI to generate them. Okay, so again, that's just another out-of-the-box thinking. Obviously, loading corporate guidelines using the RAG model, that's another good thing. How do we implement things in your repositories to help find and discover APIs? I mean, there might be something that you want to query or GitLab and say, hey, I want to know where there are multiple APIs or which APIs are out there that do similar things, so that you can finally get an inventory of, oh, well, we've got, we only need really one of these APIs, but we have 12 of them. And how many are active, and who's using them and who owns them? So again, we could start using Gen AI to produce better reporting on what's going on in your DevOps process, how often you're doing deployments, how often those deployments are failing, what are they failing on? Are they failing on API security? Are you putting out sensitive data that you forgot to check? And then you have to go back and say, well, why wasn't that in the guidelines? And again, you can do linting again, so you can hook that all in. So these are all things that are starting to assimilate these additional agents that you could start building. Okay, and that's just the beginning. Okay, so we're going to be heading toward the demo. So I'm going to kind of paint the picture of what our demo environment looks like. Okay, so we have a number of personas. I mean, this is not all of them. These are other people that could be using them too. But there's your governance team. You got your API developers, maybe your DevOps team, as well as management. Okay, and we're going to start off by using Watsonx Orchestrate. Okay, and with that, we're also going to build our agentic tools using Toolhouse, and that's what Orlando is going to show you. We have Akamai no name in our environment, so we're going to be going out to Akamai and finding some issues and showing how it gets resolved. We had a GitHub demo. We're not going to show that here, but again, that's something else that we've done in the past. And then we also have API Connect running off the SaaS version. And then as we also have access to email servers, right, that we can send things as well as Slack. Okay, so the first part of the demo, well, let me get to that next. So here's where Toolhouse fits, right? So you got your app layers, whatever you're running there. Then you have Toolhouse, which sits above your large language model layer. So you can see that there's multiples of them out there. You choose what you want. We chose Watson Granite models, okay, but we could switch, and then that's kind of what IBM has said. Yeah, open source is good. So we're going to be building this particular stack and showing you that today. The first demonstration is going to be, basically governance, health. These are things that it's going to be on our chat box that we can ask questions on. Hey, we want to know about, security issues. We want to know how CI/CD worked last night. We want to open troubleshooting. So all these things could be out there. The way we did it is we followed kind of how the Watsonx Orchestrate suggests. So I put together the chat box questions and things like that. So you can consider me a citizen CTO. So I'm putting things out there. And then I hand that over to Orlando and I say, hey, this is what we want to do. We want to build these specific skills and assistance out there and use Toolhouse, where it's needed to get everything functioning properly. Okay, so that's what we did on the first one. Here's sort of the screen. So we're actually going out there to the Akamai no-name server. We're doing this under the covers. I just wanted to show you a screen that, hey, yeah, we're out there working with it. And these are the tools that we're going to be using in this particular demo, the first one. As we go to the second demo, again, we did the same thing. I was your citizen developer putting things together on what we wanted to do. Again, Orlando's picking that up. He's going to go out there and we're going to look for some vulnerabilities. We're going to find things like, okay, what was the API spec that was running? Let's take that API spec. Let's figure out what's wrong with it. So we run it and make changes. And then we want to say, okay, well, we do want our API Connect developer who will be notified by email or Slack. Hey, we found this vulnerability. We have looked up what the remedy is, and we put it out as a new version, draft version in API Connect. So that's kind of what we're doing there. Okay, and again, here's this kind of a screenshot of what we're looking at. Above here is no-name security. Okay, and then I'm kind of pointing out, oh wow, maybe we were looking for sensitive data that was being put out there, and we could see that. And again, using the APIs out of no-name or Akamai, we can then say, hey, we could find this information and say someone is sending out PII information. Let's go do some research and have it go figure out what it is. If it's not within the guidelines, and then we can say, okay, well, let's fix it, either redact it or flat out remove it, and then go ahead and push in a new version into API Connect so someone can take a look at it and run some tests. And again, since we can interface with API Connect and some of the wonderful things they're doing out there with API testing, we could fire off a test also. And again, the developer doesn't have to do anything until he logs on and says, oh, let me see how it went. Okay, so it is now demo time, and I'm going to turn it over to Orlando.
Thank you so much, Brian. I'm just reading up my screen share here, so we're all aligned. But I loved your presentation. That was so well done. Especially, I love the slide where the agents are working, 24/7 while everybody else might be taking a nap or something interesting. Anyways, here we go. Sharing my screen right now, and just let me double check that everybody can see my screen. I'll do that here in a second, and then I'll get started. Okay, let's see. There's a slight delay, so all right. Perfect. I can see myself. All right. So I'll get started. So this is the first demo, and obviously we started with Watsonx Orchestrate. So the way that we've built this bot, and I'm zooming into my screen so everybody can see, was actually very simple. Orchestrate gives you really good tools inside of the platform to build your own chatbot. Now, with Toolhouse, building an agent is very simple, and building the UI to interact with your assistant or your agent, however you want to call it, can be done either with Watson, Orchestrate, or you can build it outside of the IBM platform. Maybe you have a specific framework, or you want to do something custom, and that's still okay. You can do that. So there's a couple of things that you need to know when you build an agent that you can use for automating some work or enhancing certain workflows or processes internally, is that you need two things. You need something called an extension, and an extension is basically an endpoint that you can call via the Orchestrate platform to do a certain action. In this example here, I submitted my extension. It's basically an open API file that has an endpoint, which basically starts the agent. And I can basically call the type of agent that I want by providing a specific ID. So this is how the extension works. So once you have this file, you can go ahead and build your agent. So here, for example, we did the demo where the agent helps you figure out your API governance task. So I'm going to click on it. And this is a little zoomed in. I'm going to zoom out just once. And you can see here, you have a beautiful way to build your agent, at least the conversational part. You can use this incredible UI, and you can figure out what to say when certain things are asked by users. So as a user, I can say things like hello, right? And then I can code into the agent to show me a drop down. And that was the part that Brian, actually, you did a great job here. So why is this important? Is your users, whether internal or external, they're going to have to go through this conversational chatbot-like interface to interact with the agent. And so on the left-hand side here, you can see that you can define your workflow. Here we're using an extension, and then more questions, more options, and you can have every use case that you want your agent to perform can be a branch in this visualization here. Let me minimize here, and you can see how we have many options down here. Each one of these can be a use case. You can have input, outputs, etc., etc. Obviously, everything can be combined together. So let's go ahead and run the first demo. So I'm gonna, so we're back here. I can restart it. I'll just go hello or hi, and it's gonna hit me with this drop down. From this drop down, I'm gonna select the security vulnerability one. That's the demo that we have, the first demo that you were talking about. And so here we go. It's kickstarting. So the idea with this demo is that, and I'm gonna show you this right here. We have a no-name instance with certain API, security incidents, et cetera, et cetera. So we basically ask the agent to go and find one of these vulnerabilities or reports and try to fix it, or give you some guidance on how you can fix it. For this specific demo, what we wanted to do was to run a scan, extract the the vulnerability, find the right API that was affected, and then send you an email with some steps on how to resolve the the issue. So I'll fast forward here, and you can see that I received an email. I'm just gonna open this one, and as you can see here, the agent was basically going through the vulnerabilities. It picked one, and then he basically sent me a way for me to remediate this vulnerability, right? And so here, this email is one of many. You can decide, we can customize it to have as many email description inside of the email. Basically what I'm trying to say is like you can have a lot of text that explains to a specific developer how and why they should remediate this issue. You could, for example, filter and tell the agent to only try to fix or give you guidance on high level, critical vulnerabilities, or you could say, do it for everything. So this is basically very customizable, and it depends on your business use case. Like Brian, you were explaining before, we're using the Granite model, but it doesn't have to be Granite. It can be any model. There are some models which are better at understanding code. Some other models are better at understanding maybe like governance files, and we can load in these files that are maybe custom to your own organization, your own company, or maybe something that can be pulled from like the OWASP report, et cetera, so that you can basically customize your agent to your needs. So this was just the first use case. Now the second use case is pretty interesting. It's a little different. I'm going to show you a little bit how it works. So inside of Toolhouse, and let me zoom in or zoom out a little bit here, we have this concept of agents. And agents, what they are, they're basically written by users like me and like you with basically text. You can write something in the text box like, hey, what's the weather like in San Francisco today? And you will see that Toolhouse will use an LLM to parse your input, your prompt. Then it will go ahead and select a tool or a combination of tools to basically find the answer to your question. And you can see here this simple example when asking for the weather in San Francisco. Toolhouse decided to use two tools. It used this one, and then here we go. It gives you an answer. Now imagine and project this with some specific tools that can be built custom for your company, like we showed in the previous example. I was leveraging NoName. I built a tool that was basically going ahead and using the NoName APIs to extract information for vulnerabilities and report at a high level, and then using another tool to go and investigate, matching that vulnerability with the endpoint. And so then finally another tool to generate a report. So by combining these tools, you can build your agent. And the beauty about Toolhouse is you can do it with simple text, as long as you have the right tools. And that's where Toolhouse comes in useful, because it also helps you building the tools. Now, the second demo uses API Connect. So inside of API Connect, we have this, this dummy API here that has some issues. If you go under Explorer, you can see, oh, it has some validation errors, et cetera. And so what we wanted to do was to build another agent. And for this demo specifically, I'm going to run it via Toolhouse directly. I'm going to skip the agentic chatbot interface. And you will see here that you can write code, and then you can say, hey, agent, please go ahead and run this code. So I'm going to run this. And then in a couple of minutes, we're going to see a new API appear under this here. And the reason why that is because what Toolhouse does, it actually uses APIs that are available to you, to your organization, maybe APIs that have been built by you internally, or they are part of a product that you use, and it can securely authenticate with these APIs to extract information, run it through like a thinking layer, or what we call as a reasoning layer, and then go ahead and decide to use other tools to accomplish its task. And so as long as you have a generic task or a very specific task that you want to achieve, and you know how to formulate that, Toolhouse can then basically fill the gap with these tools and go ahead and find information, combine it, et cetera, and then finally give you the output that you require. So in here, if the agent is probably still processing, we'll see in a couple of seconds, there's going to be another version of the API. Ideally, it will be called like version 1. And there it is, the TechCon demo API. In real time, the demo worked. you'll see that it's basically being generated by the agent, and it goes ahead, and the idea is it fixes the issues so that a user doesn't have to go and manually do it. And that is kind of the beauty of agents, right? It's their ability to do work on behalf of users and still having the ability for developers or managers to keep an eye on the fact that the agent is doing the right thing. But then at the end of the day, it's up to you to decide whether you want the agent to commit the file on GitHub, upload it to API Connect, or maybe just like we shown earlier, just send you an email with the information that you might need. So hopefully that's some food for thought for showing you how agents can be used with the IBM product. Here we only use the couple, and of course we also use no name. And hopefully, you'll have a better understanding now how the agentic, so to speak, the agentic movement that's everybody's talking about can truly improve and help your business, and get rid of those perhaps processes that are tedious and no one wants to do them, and have the AI agent do them for you. So that's all I have for today. I'd love to see some questions in the chat, perhaps, if you have any, but I'll stop sharing here. So yeah, thank you for your time. All right, let's see.
All right, I think I took control. Thank you, Orlando. That was a wonderful demo. I'm always amazed how quickly you get stuff done, especially after a 20-hour flight. From,
Yeah, we prepared well. Thanks. Collaboration always wins. So yeah, that was pretty interesting. Okay. All right.
So obviously we only touched the surface, and I'm assuming that it wasn't enough for everyone that's watching. So we're basically saying, hey, if you want to team with us and let us help you apply some of these agents to your API governance gaps, there's get hold of us, right? There's things that we can do, and I mentioned some of them. We could do some more linting. We can report incidents. We could do more things about security. We could do more things about how DevOps is working. We can help you kind of integrate some of those, because the nice thing about the ISO group is we're obviously API Connect, data power integrations. We do no name, we're doing Watsonx. So there's, kind of a one-stop shop, but we can help you in all the different areas to improve your API governance. So other things that we'll do if your company needs, hey, we'll come in and we'll do an assessment of kind of what your API governance is set up, so we can help you come up with more ideas on how you might want to solve that problem. And then, with Orlando's help, we'll do some hackathons and come on into your company and, hey,
yeah,
let's do it. Let's build it.
Yeah, we can definitely do sessions, like workshops to show you how to build your own agents. We can build them for you. We can assess, like, Brian was saying, things about your API governance, et cetera, et cetera. But I see here there's a couple of questions in the chat. I don't know if it is the right time to answer them now, or
absolutely, Orlando, please do.
For it.
Okay, I'll take the last one that came in. Bob says, can I deploy the agents anywhere? I guess you mean, like, can you deploy agents that have been built with Toolhouse anywhere, or does it have to be Orchestrate? Yeah, so the thing about agents is that anyone can build agents and they can be deployed anywhere you want. At the end of the day, an agent is basically an API call with function calling plus a prompt. So it's super dynamic. You can write the code, and have it run on your machine. Some parts will run on the Toolhouse cloud. Some other parts might be running into your own infrastructure. Or if you're interested, it could all run inside of your infrastructure. Just get in touch and let us know your use case, and we'd love to chat more. And then there is another two questions here. One is a question about API Connect, which I'll let Brian take. but let's see this longer one by Paul. Can you explain how the automation process works in the background? Specifically, how does the system interface with API Connect to perform the testing without manual intervention? I can answer that. So what happens is API Connect exposes a set of APIs to do things like retrieving API specs, managing it, et cetera, et cetera. So the automation process is triggered by either a user deciding to do an action. Maybe you have an internal dashboard, or maybe you want something that runs on a, periodically, like maybe every Monday. And so the agent starts and connects through the API Connect REST APIs, and based on what you want it to do, can do things like, find vulnerabilities, or download an API spec and run it through a linter, or perhaps another process that might be more interesting, like something more hazardous, like maybe you want to download an API spec and test it against a test server, and you want to maybe run curl request, right, on your new staging environment. So you can do all of these because of the composability of the agentic, I would call it the agentic revolution. You can have 1, 2, 10 agents run at the same time and help you achieve your goal, really. So there's no manual intervention if you don't want it there to be, and it can basically alert you with sending you a report. It could ping you on Slack, or maybe it's invisible and you wake up in the morning, go to your dashboard, and you see the work being done. It's truly up to you, really. So that was that answer. Hopefully that answers it. And then I guess the question from Katie is API Connect available on the hyperscaler marketplaces? Now, I don't know that. Brian or anyone else, does anyone know the answer to that question?
API Connect is available on AWS. Okay.
Hyperscaler marketplaces. I'm not super familiar with a hyperscaler marketplace, so I might Google it really quick. I guess you mean, yeah, I guess you're right. It is the AWS, Google Cloud, or Azure. So I think that's a question for the IBM folks in the crowd here. Is API Connect available on AWS, Google Cloud, or Azure? I don't know.
Let me answer that if you can hear me. I'm not sure if I'm on mute or not.
We can hear you.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I've actually implemented API Connect in Azure, right? You can do it under Kubernetes. As you also have the AWS SaaS version, which is what you showed today, Orlando. So you can go into AWS and get access to API Connect. There's always new things happening at IBM, and I would suggest if you want to get into more details, you could check with your IBM rep, or you can call us directly and we'll get you the information. Okay, let me see if I have another slide here. Oh, okay. If you do want more of a live demo, I mean, obviously we did one today. If you want to do some others as we add more features to it, you can just click this QR code and it'll take us to our contact page, and go ahead and just schedule a demo with us, and we'll make sure that we take care of that. All right, so we've already done Q&A, so I think we have a few extra minutes for Q&A, or do you want to take over, Brian?
Oh, if anybody still has any questions, please do jump in, go ahead and ask. Well, as Brian said, we've got a few minutes left. So we'll give it a minute, see if anybody chimes in. Otherwise, we'll shut it down and get ready for office hours. Anyone?
Well, thanks for organizing this. This was very nice. I appreciate the invite and letting us present this. I think the future, is very exciting, especially with AI now. And it's up to us humans to use AI for helping us in the things that might be less interesting, right? Like maybe we want to have the AI take over some of the boring tasks or the more repetitive and tedious tasks. And so I think this was a great session, a whole great event, and I learned a lot. So I appreciate the opportunity for sure. And yeah, I see in the chat some people are asking about the poll, but other than that, that's all I have to share. And I wish everybody a great day wherever you are, or a great night if you're from a different time zone. And thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
And the poll is active now. Again, bottom left corner of your webcast window. So please do take a minute and answer that. And we did just get another question there, guys. See ya.
The question says, have you integrated with IBM's governance add-in for API-C? I'm not familiar with API-C. Brian, do you know about API-C?
Yeah, let me answer that one.
Thank you.
Hey, Mark. A name from the past. Yeah, so I've been working with the API Connect folks about how that's all working, and we're going to be trying to hook that all in. I'm hoping that they have built the CLIs or the platform API so we can integrate as smoothly as we did with doing a draft. I imagine we will. I don't think there's a problem with that. And then as I mentioned about the spectral rules, I know that there's a whole set of them already in API Connect. So we're hoping to kind of coordinate with them, from a design time, and then also be able to support, non-design time things that happen with APIs, things like mergers and acquisitions or other things that we're going to be searching for. Plus the ability to generate our own spectral rules, that we can then say, hey, add this to API Connect. So it depends on, again, use case and all that. But yeah, we're going to be working with them very closely. Hope that answers the question.
All right. Thank you for the question, Mark. Thank you, Orlando and Brian, for the responses as well as fabulous presentation. So again, everyone take the minute, finish answering your poll, and then again, we hope to see you in the next session, which is office hours, 2:30 start time. So it does give you a few minutes here to get up, stretch, and refresh your coffee or whatever, and be prepared to ask some tough questions at 2:30 of all of our speakers of the day. Thank you, everyone, for attending.